This is the alcohol section, and I gotta preface this by saying that I think this is one of the most fascinating sections in nutrition. Part of it is because it's a social norm, it's integrated into our society, if not globally. But secondly, because there's so much misunderstanding about alcohol, things that people just don't get, facts that are thrown about. But let's put all this in perspective, all right? So, first of all, let's tease out uh, situations of alcohol where it's abused. First of all, we would want to refer to heavy episodic drinking. This is, according to the CDC, is a person who is going to consume a lot of alcohol across the whole week. There's consistency in the number of days. We take into consideration that for women, they're drinking 8 plus alcoholic drinks a week, men 15 plus. Uh, the heavy episodic drinking usually is spaced throughout the week, meaning it's normalized in their lifestyle, it is habitual. Binge drinking, on the other hand, is a little bit different. That is where you drink, for women, 4 or more alcoholic drinks in 2 hours, men 5 or more. So the binge drinking is that sudden influx of alcohol. Folks, the majority of binge drinking is actually performed by people less than or equal to 21 years old, underage. Um, and that is 90% of the type of alcoholic drinking. So, not pacing it, but 90% of people who drink under the age of 21 are binge drinking. 80% of those who binge drink are males. So, there is a pattern here. When we look at projections long term, people who have high incidences of alcohol consumption during the college years, between 17 to 25, tend to have imbalanced relationships or abused relationships with alcohol that extend 10 and 25 years out. Why do they have these long-term abusive relationships with alcohol? Because it had become normalized while they were younger, and that dependence became a part of their lifestyle, and hence the abuse persists. When evaluating a person, i.e., if the police pull someone over, they're going to look at the blood alcohol concentration, and this is the amount of alcohol that is free floating in the bloodstream. It is a slight variable because it is dependent on things like environmental factors, the rate at which the person was drinking their alcohol, the presence of food in the stomach, or the type of alcoholic beverage. These all can influence how much alcohol content is in the blood. Other things to take into consideration are genetic factors. You may have friends or have heard of how some people can process alcohol very quickly. We'd say they drink you under the table and over, because they can drink a lot and it doesn't appear to affect them. Whereas some people, I have a friend like this, one sniff of alcohol in the air and I think she's drunk. So it does affect different people differently. It's not to assume that we're all the same. When a person reaches a 0.06 blood alcohol concentration, they're they're impaired in their reactions. So, for example, if you tossed a baseball or a softball to them, they're going to have a delayed response to catch that ball. If you were to call their name, they're going to be slow to respond. And this is part of why it's seriously scary to think of people driving during this at this simple stage, because if someone walks out in front of the car, they're going to be slow to respond by hitting the brake. Or if they're sitting at a red light and the light turns green, they're slow to respond. Or if they're driving towards a light and it turns red, their judgment, their ability to make a decision will be impaired as to what to do in that situation. 0.08, the person is now legally drunk. It will impact their ability to speak and visually to see. By 0.12, the person is vomiting. Why? A very specific reason, folks. Alcohol is a toxin. It's a poison. That's why we say alcohol poisoning. By 0.45, a person is typically dead. There's only so much we can take. Now, that blood alcohol concentration, folks, that is being excreted through the breath via the lungs, that is about 5% of the alcohol being discharged by lungs. When we urinate, about 5% of the alcohol is discharged through our urine, but the other 90% is caught in the human body circulating. I have this little sign here just for you to please be present to, that when a person starts to experience alcohol poisoning, like any poison, if it's going to be arsenic or alcohol or a toxic waste, the body will always have similar responses, not just the vomiting, the inability to manage its temperature, hypothermia, erratic breathing because it's impacting their ability, their lungs to contract and expand. Their skin will be clammy and cold. They won't be able to communicate effectively, and they will not be responsive, and they will start to turn blue. So all different stages to understand indicators of alcohol poisoning. And alcohol poisoning, folks, is the beginning of that death march. The CDC and the National Institute of Health, they have estimated a few different figures which are fascinating. Number one, the CDC estimates about 88,000 people per year die due to alcohol or alcohol-related incidents. So this could be something as simple as drinking oneself to death, and this is, by the way, between the years 2006, 2010, or this could be an example of people in a car accident, people who are partying and they fall off the balcony because they're so inebriated. The CDC estimates that 9,967 people in the year 2014 alone died due to alcohol-impaired driving fatalities. Which happens to be actually 1/3 of all driving fatalities. And it is estimated that approximately 1,825 college students a year, 1,825 college students a year die from alcohol poisoning. All right, we're going to take a look at a case study. This was just over a year ago. Where Noah Domingo was at a fraternity party. He was following the footsteps of his sister, studying, I believe, biochemistry or biology. She had just recently graduated from UCI, and now he was there pursuing the same degree as her. Oops, that's not synced up. All right, hold on a second. Let's get to the right starting point.
A desperate 911 call from inside this Irvine home on Sycamore Street.
Okay, and what's the emergency?
Someone's not breathing. They're not okay.
Someone's not breathing?
Yeah, they're not okay. Like, their whole body's like fluid right now.
Are they conscious?
No.
Trying to help UC Irvine freshman Noah Domingo, the call came in 9:30 Saturday morning.
Our dispatcher began providing CPR instructions to the person who dialed 911.
Okay, continued compressions about 100 to 120 per minute.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Really push down.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Come on now.
Soon the dispatcher asked what led to this.
Why is he unconscious? What happened?
I mean, he just drank too much. He fell asleep with his head down.
Police say Noah may have been unresponsive for several hours before that 911 call.
How long has he been unconscious?
Since, maybe like 11 o'clock.
Well, we do know that was a party that was going on there that night.
Irvine police responded to 2 noise complaints from this house at 10:45 Friday night and 1 o'clock Saturday morning. UCI has since
Okay, that is all beside the point. The reality is a couple of things to take into consideration. We never know who the person is who is going to have less enzymes to process to metabolize the alcohol, who will get drunker faster versus slower. Number 2, honestly, alcohol is something we learn as we mature how to manage. which is why they did move it up to the age of 21 as the legal limit. But the reality is, I'm sorry to say, you guys, but even 21-year-olds typically don't understand the impact alcohol has, let alone most people. I mean, I've been on a mission going around educating people. I don't have an issue with people drinking, but I just like people having knowledge so that they understand and make the best choices for themselves. So Noah, when Noah died, he was at an alcohol concentration of 0.331. He was nowhere near 0.45. But if you recall, one of the signs of alcohol poisoning is a person turns blue. And as he said, Noah was blue. So we don't know what our own limits are for our bodies. And the only way we're ever going to find out is when it's too late. All right, so what are the recommendations for alcohol? What does that mean to be safe, to be smart about it? Well, when we're talking about alcoholic drinks per day, not per hour, but per day, we recommend that people not exceed, for women, 1 alcoholic drink a day, and men 1 to 2 alcoholic drinks a day. Men have a little more of a spread, 1 to 2, because it's honestly really dependent on their height and their weight. Other things to take into consideration as to how much alcohol will impact us is our hydration status. You keep in mind that men tend to have more muscle mass than women, which means they have more fluid in their body and able to handle alcohol a little bit better than females. A serving size of alcohol, first of all, it's 7 calories per gram, not 4 calories per gram like carbohydrates, which people often refer to alcohol as a carbohydrate. It's not really. And protein, which is 4 calories per gram, but it's less than fats, which are 9 calories per gram. Because alcohol is not digested in the intestinal tract, it is actually metabolized. The body utilizes it differently. All right, a standard drink in the United States is 14 grams, all right? In the UK, it is currently 10 grams. They actually reduced the standard size of alcoholic drink because of the problem of alcohol abuse in the UK. They're trying to get their hands on it. They're grappling with it. All right, if you notice looking at the picture, alcohol, different types of alcohol, where we're talking about wine, beer, alcoholic drinks like wine coolers or liquor, they all have different sizes because it really depends on the concentration, how much fluid to how much alcohol is in that drink. Beer has a heck of a lot more water, whereas wine is a little bit less and liquor has very little. That's pretty much almost straight up liquid alcohol. All right, so let's understand the pathway of what alcohol is doing when it goes in the human body. And this is where I find this just incredibly fascinating. So first of all, let's just take into consideration that, let's assume that a person like Noah has been drinking and with it has had some food. Now, the first thing that's going to happen is when alcohol enters our system, we want to take into consideration the behavior with the human brain. As it's circulating through the body, it will come in contact with the brain. When it does, if you remember, your brain is made of proteins and fats. Alcohol, if you recall, from the protein section, denatures protein. It renders it useless. So when alcohol travels through the body, it's going to come in contact with the brain and it's going to denature proteins. The person will experience a sense of mindlessness, or as some people say, they might refer to it as a glow or feeling warm, happy place. Well, that's numbing, folks. That's shutting the body down. When a person experiences this, they're no longer mindful. They're not present to their choices, and they tend to kind of fall into habits. So maybe their habit is that They always start out by making sure they have a meal, but in the mindlessness of the moment, they might start choosing things that they see that they're familiar with watching other people eat. Or if the server says, well, the mozzarella sticks are really good tonight, a person who's drunk may not think, oh yeah, I'm lactose intolerant, I shouldn't be drinking that. They might just go along with it and be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Ooh, yeah, not the best idea. So we tend to mindlessly eat when we're drunk. We're not paying attention to our dietary choices. We're not paying attention to our quantity. If you think about the type of foods that are often associated with alcoholic drinks, folks, this is going to be your bar type food, your pizza, your wings, buffalo wings, barbecue wings, the deep fried mozzarella sticks, the bread sticks. What do all these foods have in common? Or what do they not have in them? All right, think about what they have in common. They're all high fat, protein, and refined carbohydrate, folks, but especially high fat because that just goes really well with alcohol. They also tend to be very high in salt. Bars love to serve food high in salt. I mean, think of the free salted peanuts on the bar. And why do we always have nuts around when there's drinking? I think that's a riot. Or salting the glass of a margarita because it promotes us to drink more alcohol. It's a great ploy by restaurants and bars to keep you buying more. When we are drinking the alcohol, it will activate dopamine. And so this will be part of our feeling anesthetized, feeling happy that everything's okay. When alcohol passes through the stomach, so let's just take a pause for a brief moment and think about the pathway of alcohol. Now that we've identified that it's one of its first contacts with the brain will immediately anesthetize our feelings and our thought process so that we'll mindlessly eat. When we first start drinking alcohol, preferably with food in our stomach, it will pass through our mouth, down our esophagus, into our stomach. Some of it will diffuse from the stomach lining straight into the blood. More will pass if there's no food, but hopefully there is. And then it'll pass on to the intestinal tract where it'll be taken up into our blood. And in our bloodstream, the heart will circulate the alcohol through the body over and over again. It'll come in contact with your heart. It'll come in contact with your kidneys, because if you recall, 5% is discharged via urine. It'll come in contact with your lungs, because 5% is discharged via the lungs. It will come in contact with your liver, your pancreas. It will come in contact with every part of the human body where there is where there is blood flowing. So there is nowhere alcohol doesn't touch. Just keep that in mind, all right? I also want you to really stay present to the fact that, as I said, alcohol denatures proteins. That's why when we go get a shot, they wipe our arm with alcohol. It denatures the proteins of bacteria. It kills them. All right, so when alcohol enters the stomach, it will interfere with the release and balance of leptin and ghrelin. Leptin, you will fail to have a satiety sensation, and ghrelin initially will be anesthetized, but for some, there's some research on this, and it appears that it might activate ghrelin so that people have a concept of hunger and start eating, even though it's not necessarily what the body truly wants. In the stomach, when alcohol moves down there, it will interfere with the release or will block altogether the production of intrinsic factor and its secretion into the stomach. If you recall, intrinsic factor is necessary for the body to be able to pick up B12 and deliver it to the intestinal tract to be absorbed. So right away, alcohol interferes with the body's ability to take up B12. So if you're eating dairy products or any type of animal product where B12 is present, you will not access the B12. At this point, there is an enzyme that is secreted in the stomach, and it's very little. It's called alcohol dehydrogenase, And what it does is it just initially starts breaking down the alcohol. But the unfortunate part is that enzyme in the stomach that starts breaking the alcohol down, it converts it to acetaldehyde, which is highly toxic. Folks, alcohol and especially acetaldehyde are ROS, meaning reactive oxygen species. And what they do is when they come in contact with cells, they steal electrons and they disable those cells. The more cells that are disabled, the more cells that die. When the alcohol comes in contact with the stomach, it has the potential to, depending on the volume of alcohol a person consumes, to either increase or decrease hydrochloric acid. Now, a little bit, an alcohol once in a while, the hydrochloric acid will be decreased, but the more alcohol a person consumes, the greater release of hydrochloric acid, which can then burn the stomach because it's highly acidic, and can contribute to things like bleeding ulcers, which then interferes with the person's ability to process and absorb nutrients even when they're not drinking. From the stomach, the alcohol, as I said before, will pass through to the intestines. And once in the intestines, it's going to now block any B12 that's there from being absorbed into the bloodstream. Because as you recall, these are water-soluble vitamins. B vitamins can transfer freely and distribute throughout the body. Alcohol will also completely altogether prevent or reduce the amount, depending on how much alcohol is consumed, thiamine and folate. Now, thiamine is one of your Fab 5 for energy metabolism, and a deficiency of thiamine, if you recall, is the foundation of the disease Wernicke-Korsakoff. That was the disease where I talked about, like, people in LA, they walk across the street and they walk kind of bent backwards, behaving really weird, because the loss of thiamine impacts the central nervous system. Alcohol also interferes with the cell's absorption of folate and even the retention of folate by cells. The body will discharge and lose its folate. Folks, folate is necessary for new cell production, new blood cell production, and folate is necessary for methylation, meaning expression of our DNA for new cells. The alcohol will interfere with any new nutrients that need to transport into the blood from the intestinal tract. So it'll also interfere with your macronutrients and other micronutrients. As the alcohol is circulating through the body, when it comes in contact with the liver, we have enzymes there, and that enzyme will be activated with the help of zinc, a cofactor, and NAD to produce alcohol dehydrogenase. And this is your first enzyme. There was a little bit, if you recall, in the stomach. This is your first enzyme that will have a full-on assault on the alcohol to start metabolizing it as quickly as possible. As it does this, the alcohol dehydrogenase will convert the alcohol into acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde, folks, is one of the most toxic substances for human beings. This acetaldehyde will circulate through the body as a reactive oxygen species, and this is where it'll start attacking and killing cells. When the acetaldehyde comes in contact, when it is the alcohol is being metabolized and converted to acetaldehyde, this activity, which now is an even more toxic version of alcohol, will interfere with the liver's ability to perform its functions. And one of those functions is the activation of both vitamins A, from beta carotene to A, for things like your skin health, bone health, and eye health, and vitamin D, which is activated from what? Dietary cholesterol, your sterols, in exposure to sunlight, transfers through your skin down to your kidneys, and then becomes an active form that your body can use in the liver. So alcohol interferes with the liver's ability to perform its functions to maintain homeostasis for human health. As alcohol moves through the body, there'll be a systematic distribution through every single part of the body. And as it passes through the blood vessels, it'll cause vasodilation, meaning the blood vessels will relax, they'll expand, and then they can constrict to get smaller. As they relax, blood tension will go down, and then as they constrict, blood pressure will increase, which will now put more pressure on the heart. As alcohol is circulating through the body, it'll come in contact with our pancreas, which is necessary in the creation of insulin for our cells to be able to accept glucose in our blood. It will interfere with our digestive enzymes necessary for processing our macronutrients, protein, and fats. Okay, let's go back to the liver. Let's visit this again. When alcohol is circulating through the body, it will do a few things. Number one, it will enhance the release of fat that's circulating the blood and bring them back to the liver. But it'll also interfere with the liver's ability to package up and distribute LDL to the blood. Oh my gosh. And then fats that are in adipose tissue can get released and again delivered back to the liver. So what happens is that when a person consumes a lot of alcohol over and over again, the fats congregate in the liver and then don't get distributed. And folks, this is now the foundation of alcoholic fatty liver disease. And alcoholic fatty liver disease persists in preventing the ability of the body to activate vitamins A and D, interfere with the body's ability to store B12 in the liver. This interferes with the body's metabolization of other nutrients that will pass through it: fructose, glucose, proteins, amino acids, and your glycerol backbones and fatty acids. When we have glucose that needs to be converted to glycogen in the liver for storage to maintain blood homeostasis, alcohol will block the liver's ability to take up that glucose and convert it to glycogen to maintain homeostasis. Alcohol also blocks the ability of the liver to break down the glucose and release it into the blood to maintain homeostasis. It interferes with the body's ability to convert amino acids into glucose. That's gluconeogenesis. It interferes with the body's ability to convert glycerol backbones and lactic acid into new glucose, which means alcohol interferes with the body's ability to achieve homeostasis. The acetaldehyde, the toxic first stage breakdown of alcohol, is circulating through the body as a reactive oxygen species, attacking the cells of tissues that it comes in contact with. This includes the human heart. The cells that it comes in contact with, it'll induce the release of folate from those cells, which will now induce a synthesis failure of DNA and red blood cells. No new cell production. So if you think about it, people who are heavy drinkers, they tend to have skin that is older, more aged, and less healthy looking. As the body is processing the acetaldehyde, the ratio of NAD to NADH becomes imbalanced because as your body enzymatically converts alcohol to acetaldehyde, the NAD will absorb hydrogen as a part of that process. And as the NADH now increases, because of the volume of alcohol we have, the output means that we will end up with an increased volume of lactic acid being retained. If you look over to below kidneys, kind of at an angle, you'll notice that as lactic acid increases, This will interfere with the kidney's ability to release uric acid, and the uric acid will be retained. Uric acid, folks, is what generates gout. And gout is highly painful because the uric acid that builds up in the joints causes incredible inflammation and acidity. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The uric acid then promotes insulin resistance by the cells, causing the blood sugars to skyrocket. This is any glucose that's circulating. As the acetaldehyde is circulating through the body, as is the alcohol, it will come in contact with the hypothalamus, and it will turn off the communication system between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which means that the pituitary gland will not dispatch hormones to the kidneys saying, hey, retain your fluid and retain all of these nutrients that are now floating around in the blood that were discharged from cells. That, folks, is why alcohol is a diuretic. It severs the communication system between hypothalamus and pituitary gland, resulting in the loss of fluid, excessive fluid, otherwise known as breaking the seal. Once you start urinating after drinking alcohol, you don't stop. You'll just get more and more dehydrated until the alcohol is done digesting through your body and your hypothalamus recovers and is able to start communicating with your pituitary gland again. As alcohol influences the kidneys now, with their open gates, will start discharging urine, and with it, your body will freely discharge thiamine, folate, and B12. So that's that which was interfered with our ability to absorb in the intestinal tract now is being discharged from the body. Folks, this is where malnutrition, undernutrition really kicks off, is the body can't take nutrients in, and now it starts discharging vital nutrients necessary as coenzymes in an assortment of enzymatic reactions. The kidneys will also start discharging electrolytes magnesium, calcium, and potassium. Magnesium, calcium, and potassium are all necessary for heart stimulation, for muscle contraction, relaxation, and for blood vessel tension homeostasis. With the urine, zinc will be lost, and zinc, folks, is vital for sensories, for taste buds, and for appetite. So now alcohol interferes with a person's desire to eat, not just when they're drinking, because it becomes a mindless experience, but after they stop drinking, it'll interfere with their desire to eat a variety of flavors of foods. In the liver, as acetaldehyde circulates through the body, it will come in contact with a second enzyme, which is acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. This enzyme has the role of breaking acetaldehyde down now to acetate, water, and CO2. Okay? Acetaldehyde, folks, is the highly toxic version that can poison a person to death, like Noah. So what happened is, in Noah's case, he was most likely drinking a lot of alcohol, not necessarily drinking it with a lot of food, and most likely not double fisting it with equal amounts of water, which I strongly recommend if you ever drink. Double fist it. One hand is alcohol, the other one is water. The more you're able to dilute it inside your body, the greater fighting chance your body has from being poisoned. So the acetaldehyde circulating through Noah's body caused the body to intoxicate, to deconstruct, to discharge its nutrients. Which ones? To discharge thiamine, folate, B12, magnesium, calcium, potassium, and zinc. Cause the body to prevent the activation of vitamins A and D. Interfered with the body's ability to take up glucose into cells, to utilize glucose from other products like amino acids as an energy source, and block the body's ability to store glucose as a later energy. Alcohol caused the fats to be delivered back to the liver, compounded in the liver, and become a toxic environment. Once alcohol passes through that stage, as long as the person survives, acetaldehyde dehydrogenase breaks it down to acetate, folks, which is basically vinegar, water, and CO2. The CO2 we breathe out, the acetate and the water we start to urinate out, folks. This is why you might say a person who drinks is a person who is full of piss and vinegar. Literally. All right, the acetate, though, folks, circulating in the body serves as a substrate for fatty acid synthesis out of our macronutrients, both carbohydrate and protein. What I'm saying is that after you've drank alcohol and it's been completely metabolized down to acetate, that acetate now comes in contact with your enzymatic system and promotes your body to speed up in converting any leftover glucose, fructose, and proteins, amino acids, into non-essential fatty acids. So alcohol promotes the conversion of nutrients to fats, and the fats are stored on the human body. So not only are we consuming a high-fat diet when we're mindlessly drinking, and alcohol, though 7 calories per gram, provides no nutritional value to the human body, but promotes the conversion of nutrients to fat, and that promotes weight gain. Alcohol serves as this appetite suppressant, one, because as we said, as we lose zinc, that interferes with our sense of taste and appetite. And with the loss of B vitamins that influence our desire to eat, our appetite, your B vitamins, thiamine, folate, and B12. All right, this is just a little review for you. I'm not going to go into this word by word of what happens to the human body when a person drinks alcohol on an empty stomach versus a full stomach. So here's the question, Noah aside, because we now know that, obviously there's a few things that went sideways with Noah. Number one, we don't know the variables. We don't know how much he ate or how much he drank, what pace he drank. Did he have any water with it? But what we do know is that all likelihood that he does not have a high production of enzymes to be able to convert it quickly, or maybe he just drank too much too fast. In the end, I guess we just really don't know. What we do know is Noah died at a 0.331 alcohol level, which my heart goes out to his family, because what an investment to raise a child from a baby, to put them through life, to see them with all their successes and their failures, and to celebrate every moment of your love for them and from them, and to ship them off to college thinking they're going to start building their own future, for expressing themselves and finding out who they are and what they want. And then that's it. First semester, boom. There's nothing left. That sucks. All right, the news often talks about wine, how amazing wine is. It's an elixir of the gods. But you know what? Let's get real, okay? Time to put that critical thinking hat on, and let's analyze this. First of all, wine is made from grapes. Yes, it's a fruit, which means fruits and vegetables are high in potassium. Wine is concentrated. Yes, wine is very high in potassium, and potassium plays a vital role in helping balance our blood pressure. Okay. It is suggested that small amounts of alcohol will help us maintain our blood pressure, keep it from going up. All right, let's think on that for a minute. How does alcohol have the ability to maintain our blood pressure When alcohol, though rich in potassium, causes the hypothalamus to discommunicate with the pituitary gland, which causes the pituitary gland not to release hormones to the kidneys, antidiuretic hormones, saying, hey, hold on to your fluid. So that when you drink alcohol, you start urinating, and as you urinate out all of the potassium that's free floating in your body. How can your body maintain blood pressure when it's discharging its potassium? Do you see what's wrong with this picture? It doesn't add up. So what possibly could be influencing a person's blood pressure that happens to correlate with alcohol consumption? Well, I like to think of it as when I watch TV sometimes, which is a rare moment in history, you'll see people for a wine ad, and they'll be typically in Italy, sitting around at a table with a bunch of people, a lot of food. They're cheering, they're clinking their wine glasses, they're laughing. There's a beautiful Italian sunset in the background. What a beautiful image. Folks, I don't need anything else but Italy to get my blood pressure to come down. It's not the alcohol. It's slowing down. It's choosing a drink that we relax to, whether it's water or milk or coffee or alcohol. Part of it has to do with our behavior. Are we staying wound up, or are we intentionally slowing down? All right, thirdly, alcohol has beneficial phytochemicals like resveratrol. Yeah, you know what? It does. And those folks help heal the body like antioxidants. But how can the antioxidants heal your body when, number one, you're unable to absorb them because alcohol interferes with the absorption of nutrients in the intestinal tract? Secondly, when alcohol is a reactive oxygen species attacking cells, killing them, are you telling me that these phytochemicals are going to chase the reactive oxygen species and run around and heal all these cells that it's attacked? No, because we're not effectively able to absorb the phytochemicals. So this whole idea is absolutely screwy. Folks, it has potassium. You can't absorb it. It causes our blood pressure actually to go up. So it's the ritual is what helps our blood pressure come down. And it may be rich in phytochemicals, but we can't access them. Alcohol is a carbohydrate. It's a source of energy? No. It's not 4 calories per gram. It is not a carbohydrate. It is an alcohol. Just like sugar alcohols, when we consume too much of them, it promotes diarrhea. Well, drinking alcohol is a carbohydrate, but it's a sugar alcohol. We cannot process it that way. So, so alcohol may not necessarily be the drink of the gods. Wait a minute, I didn't say that. Gods are immortal. They could drink all the alcohol they want. It's just not necessarily the drink of humans. Not for the things that the news has touted as saying are the health benefits. So what are your options? Well, grape juice. Grape juice is what wine is made from. So why not just drink grape juice to get all that wonderful potassium and those fantastic phytochemicals? And maybe that'll help me maintain my blood pressure. There's no alcohol. This is now real carbohydrate calories that the body can use as energy. Yeah, that's true. But grape juice is fructose and water, folks. And fructose water, typical of juice, induces dehydration because what? It's a high solute load of sugar. In addition, that surge of sugar into your bloodstream, when you repeatedly use it, will promote weight gain. Oh my goodness, what do we do with all this? So then what? simple. Eat the darn grapes. Then you get the potassium, you get the phytonutrients. Slow down, chew it, enjoy it. You'll help reduce your blood pressure. And you'll get fiber, which is kind to your intestinal tract. All right, when people consume alcohol, they are setting themselves up for a variety of nutrition-related chronic diseases because of the disruption in the homeostasis of the body. Because alcohol, if you recall, interfered with insulin, with the production of the pancreatic enzymes. By the way, part of the challenges is that when the pancreas gets the message that there's carbohydrates in the diet, it starts producing insulin. But the alcohol interferes with the pancreas' ability to release the insulin, so the insulin stays with the pancreas and starts digesting it, starts interfering and swelling up the pancreas, especially when a person repeatedly abuses alcohol. The other enzymes will also start to break down the pancreas. So with an abuse of alcohol, we end up with high blood sugar, insulin resistance. That, folks, puts a person on the path for diabetes. When a person is consuming alcohol and it interferes with their insulin, the high blood sugar will convert to triglycerides. The triglycerides, folks, will be more adipose tissue, which then will be sequestered back to the liver, promoting fatty liver disease. The high triglycerides will be in the bloodstream, promoting atherosclerosis, blood plaque, which then promotes high blood pressure and heart disease. The triglycerides also build up as central obesity and promote insulin resistance, putting us back on the path of diabetes again. Because alcohol is a diuretic and causes us to discharge our electrolytes in our fluids, it will, in the interim and over long term, promote high blood pressure. High blood pressure puts more tension on the heart, straining the heart further, putting more pressure on blood vessels that may have plaque lining them, increasing the likelihood of a clot or a traveling clot, an embolism that can become what? A heart attack or stroke. High alcohol consumption, folks, correlates with low consumption of fish, fruits, vegetables, legumes, lentils. These low dietary sources of health, of which alcohol also interferes with motivation and the self-discipline and mindful thinking, which means it disrupts a person's likelihood to exercise. This then reduces HDL, which reduces the body's ability to sweep the blood and remove excess fats back to the liver intentionally to be converted to bile for the emulsification of fats in your intestinal tract. As we consume alcohol and it promotes the fatty liver disease, this increases central obesity, and this further promotes insulin resistance, and we end up with insulin resistance as a whole, promoting diabetes. So alcohol is an extraordinary instigator for metabolic risk factors. And if you recall, it takes 3 metabolic risk factors to have metabolic syndrome. And when you have 3, it is the perfect storm for a major disease, which is on the list of causes of mortality in the United States: heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure. The long-term effects of alcohol, first and foremost, is going to result in malnutrition because of the loss of nutrients and the disruption of homeostasis in the human body. Folks, this will interfere with every functionality in the body, starting with the immune response, inability of vitamin A for skin production results in rashes and sores. The loss of activation of vitamins A and D interferes with bones. The loss of calcium and magnesium discharge when we drink will promote osteoporosis. As we said, the insulin resistance will promote diabetes. The heart muscles will become diseased because the reactive oxygen species status of acetaldehyde and alcohol will impact the heart's muscles. Brain disease, because your brain is what? Protein and fats. The protein is denatured by alcohol. The central nervous system is starved of its B vitamins. And stroke, because of the possibility of that blood clot traveling. Ulcers and inflammation of the stomach and intestines because of the excessive release of hydrochloric acid because of the loss of nutrients necessary to fortify the intestinal walls. Non-viral hepatitis, the inflammation of the liver because of the assault on the liver and metabolizing a highly toxic substance, and because of the impairment of the liver to perform its normal functions like activation of vitamins A and D, and the surge of fats that come to the liver. Your organs, your bladder, your kidney, your pancreas, and for men, prostate damage, because the loss of nutrition means that these organs are unable to regenerate new cells and heal themselves. Impaired memory and balance from functionality of the brain, because the denaturation of proteins in the brain, the loss of nutrients for the human brain. Major psychological depression, loss of nutrients, imbalance of hormones, deterioration of testicles and adrenal glands, loss of nutrients to maintain homeostasis, feminization and sexual impotence in men. I honestly can't speak to that one. And increased risks of death from all causes. Yeah, because when the human body experiences full-on malnutrition, this is protein energy malnutrition marasmus, it impairs the body's ability to sustain its structure and perform its functions. The loss of nutrition disables the human body. Alcohol plays a very direct relationship in the health of the heart, cardiomyopathy, polyneuropathy, the nervous system, the pancreas, this is pancreatitis, this is inflammation of the pancreas, gastritis, inflammation of the stomach, liver disease, which of course sets the stage for things like cirrhosis, alcoholic myopathy, breast cancer, chronic hepatitis, chronic pancreatitis, degeneration of the nervous system, esophageal cancer, hypertension. Are you getting the picture? So let me tell you a story about someone I know who was a drinker. And this is my neighbor, Alan. He lived next door to me. And Alan was a single guy and had a dream of getting married and having a family. And Alan bought his own house, really nice big house. And he had a good job. He worked with a software company, I think, testing programs and stuff. And when the economy took a turn, oh my gosh, many years ago, you guys would have been probably around third grade or so, fourth grade, somewhere in there. When the economy took a really negative turn for the worse, his company laid off a lot of employees, and many of which were Alan's friends, and they had families, and they lost their jobs, they lost their homes, and that tore Alan apart. Because he had his job, he was living in his house, he was okay, didn't lose any money, but these friends around him, their lives had become deconstructed, and he really internalized that. He felt horrible about it. So to anesthetize his feelings, Alan would go home and he'd have a beer or 2 or 3 or 4 at night to make himself forget all the things that upset him during the day. And, Alan kept doing this, but it always seemed kind of contained and at home. And, he'd come over and have dinner with us, and he'd bring over the beer, and, they'd sit around and they'd drink, and everything seemed okay. He's walking home. I'm not worried. He's not driving. But then I would notice, one day I was outside, And Alan drove up at lunchtime, and I knew he always came home for lunch, and I didn't think much of it. I usually saw him and waved to him, but this time he was driving right by when I was loading the car, and I turned over and looked at him and waved, and he slowed down and he looked at me, and he was kind of smiling, but as he drove in automatic, I noticed that he was really clutching with his hand the automatic stick, and he was shaking. And I thought, well, this is odd. But he stops and he's like, hey, I'm just coming home for lunch. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, right, Alan. Have a great lunch. Yeah, I'll see ya. And he drives on and pulls into his garage and closes up. And, usually typical of Alan, about an hour later, he'll leave. And so as he's leaving, I see him drive away and he slows down and he waves at me, calm and relaxed and all smiles. And I just had that kind of knot in my feeling, like, you go home for lunch and you were shaking so badly before and now you're so perfectly calm. It just felt weird. Something was really wrong there. So as Alan would come over, he'd come over for holidays, he'd come over for parties, for events. And one time Alan came over, and this was I think around Thanksgiving. And, well, no, actually earlier than that. He came over and we were barbecuing. And my mother was orchestrating her Weber, and she gives Alan this little disposable aluminum tray full of little fingerling potatoes. And I remember staying there, and I hear her and she's like, here, Alan, can you take these to the kitchen? She passes this little teeny tray to him, like the salad plate size, and he drops it and dropped all the potatoes on the ground. And it was just kind of like, what? What happened? It didn't make sense. And I remember hearing him say, oh, I didn't get a handle on it. Okay. Odd, but whatever. You don't think too much about it. And then come Thanksgiving, we're making pumpkin pies and the timer's going off, and my mother's like, hey, Alan, can you get that pie out of the oven? And Alan walks over and he looks in the oven, and then he backs up and he literally goes, no, I gotta go home. I gotta go home and I gotta return my mother's call. I'm not kidding. He said that. And he left, walked out the door, just turned around and left. And it was kind of like, oh crap, somebody's got to get the pies out of the oven. But it was weird because what happened? So then Christmas comes and Alan comes over. And he sits at the table, and my timeline might be a little off on this, but he sits at the table and he announces that he has a drinking problem. And it's like, wow. Yeah, I got that. I was already complete, and I'm like, okay, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you for your honesty. And you have to understand, my mother is a binge drinker. So Alan announces this. We're all silent for a moment, and then my mother turns to him and she goes, Alan, would you like another drink? And his response, yeah, that'd be great. And they continue drinking. And I thought, my God, this man acknowledges he has an alcohol drinking problem, and what does he do? He just continues to drink. So then we used to go to Alan's house in the summer and we would watch movies, and we watched this TV series, my friends and I, we'd all get together and we'd have like a little buffet thing going on, and we'd watch several shows at once. And it was kind of like a little pseudo party, and it was fun and we had a great time. Alan would always sit there. He would never eat with us. He always said he ate before we got there. And he would sit there with one beer can and he'd hold it in his lap through the whole show. And it's like, wow, okay, good. He's taking this seriously. He's reducing the amount of alcohol. One day, though, Alan gets up and goes to the kitchen, and I have to go to the restroom, and there's a restroom kind of over off the family room. And so for whatever reason on this planet Earth, I got up and I could have either walked through the living room or walked through the kitchen. And I chose to walk through the kitchen. And as I approach the kitchen and walk through it, I notice in the corner of my eye, Alan kind of standing off in the corner, and he's holding this gigantic bottle of Jim Beam liquor. I mean, a huge bottle, almost like the ones that you're kind of like, that's really big. And he's guzzling this thing upside down, inverted. And I was walking by so quickly to the restroom, it didn't fully register, but I get in there and I start thinking, what the heck did I just see? And when I come out of the restroom, he's back in his chair. And so I'm thinking, I've got to be seeing things. I mean, this just couldn't be real. This was too weird. Okay, so I let it go. Never noticed anything again. You know, when we're coming over in the summer and life goes on, and Alan regales us with these stories of cooking his own meals and making all these great dietary choices. But then one day I notice he's got all of these marks up and down his arms. I'm like, Alan, what the heck? He says, oh, well, my doctor's giving me B12 pushes because I'm deficient. The guy had track marks all over his arms. Yes, it was his naturopathic doctor giving him B12 shots. But the thing is, I'm sorry, the woman must have been dumber than doornails. The guy was an alcoholic. His B12 deficiency was due to his alcoholism, not for any other reason. And the B12 pushes were not going to make a difference. That's a Band-Aid. What he needed was to stop drinking. And clearly, he was not stopping drinking. So time passes, and Alan comes over one day, and he's walking with a cane. And I'm thinking, what? And he says, yeah, well, I'm just a little unsteady on my foot. This is like in the fall, I don't know, maybe a year or two later. And it's like, okay, well, that's smart. Yeah, if you're not steady on your feet, a cane is a great idea. And Alan is about 49 at this point. And then a couple months later, Alan comes over and he's pushing a walker with the little tennis balls on the bottom. It's like, Alan. And he goes, yeah, I'm just not steady on my feet. Okay, got it. All right, well, good thing you've got the walker. Okay. Yeah. A few months later, Alan was having work done on his house, and the contractor came running over, pounding on the door and screaming for my mother to come to the house. Alan was not breathing. He was 49 years old, and he dropped dead in the living room. His alcohol got the better of him. He completely unraveled his body, drank himself to death in about 2 to 3 years. Why? I'm sure a myriad of reasons, but what I do know is that all the things that upset him, he buried inside of himself, and he tried to anesthetize himself to cover up those feelings, to hide them with alcohol. And the alcohol, the reactive oxygen species, deconstructed his body, interfered with his ability to absorb nutrients. Yeah, that really stunk. Now, on another personal note, talking back about that thing of uric acid, my grandfather, he lived through World War II and saw the horrors of all horrors. And he could never reconcile himself with what he saw. And so he passed his time by drinking. Apparently, before I was born and when I was little, my grandfather would be very active during the week, do all the right things. He would go to work, he'd come home, he'd help cook, take turns cooking dinner, he would work in the garden with my grandmother, and on the weekends, though, apparently, he would get mad, raving drunk. My aunt told me from my father's side that everyone knew this is who he was. This is what he do, is just get really drunk on the weekends. And nobody said anything. I think that's weird, but whatever. So as my grandfather retired and stayed home working in the garden, he just slid into a constant drinking all day long, every day. I grew up where my grandfather always had a beer in his hand. Never saw anything otherwise. He was pretty darn quiet, didn't say much, stared a lot, sat with me a lot, but didn't make a stink about anything, but just always had that beer in hand. But what my grandfather did have is gout. And he had the gout in his hands, and the hands were swollen. His fingers were swollen like little clubs, little baby bananas for each finger. And he was supposed to take medication, but he got all angry with the doctor and apparently refused to take the medication. Well, now that I'm in dietetics, I understand. He didn't take the medication because you cannot mix alcohol with the medication. He made a choice. In addition, I now find out after the fact that alcohol increases, as you know, the retention of uric acid in the body. My grandfather, as proud of a man as he was, he had a gigantic belly. That, folks, is what? Fatty liver disease and edema, protein deficiency, fluid in his belly, and had very skinny arms and legs because he was so severely malnourished by the alcohol. His giant fingers would ooze out of them uric acid crystals. Literally, the skin would split apart and eject these crystals. The crystals were so highly acidic that we finally took him to the doctor. It took years, and he finally allowed us to take him. And when the doctors x-rayed his hands for the gout to look for the uric acid, they said that there was so much activity in his hands that there were no bones in his fingers. The uric acid had burned away all of the bones. So they amputated some of the fingers and they left other fingers there as little blood jelly bags. My grandfather eventually died. He was the love of my life, but for him, the alcohol was his way of being and was more important to him. I don't take it personal because that was his choice and it predated me. It was him fighting his demons from the war. It taught me you can't save a person. They have to make the decision on their own. You can let them know how much it hurts you. You can let them know what you see, but they have to make a decision on their own. So folks, what I'm telling you is alcohol impacts the human body. It can be consumed safely, or it can be damaging short-term or long-term. But we have to acknowledge and take into consideration that damage that we are ignorant to ourselves emanates out and impacts other people. Okay, a variety of sources for you. Why? Because you have an alcohol paper to write on, to discuss. You have very specific questions to answer as a part of your second assessment. Please be thorough. Please be cautious to make sure you utilize quality sources. That's why I give you a variety of sources I've previewed and consider highly acceptable. And be thoughtful. This is your opportunity to teach me, back to me, what exactly is going down. Okay, alcohol, EtOH, alcohol, ethanol alcohol.